All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and today is Monday, the 7th of June. First disclaimer in front of you, everything that we're going through is for information purposes only. Not giving out any advice or recommendations. This video, of course, is for education purposes only. If the screen is a bit blurry, just give it a little bit of time so YouTube can render the high def version. Also, you can follow along with, I always put the screen print on Twitter, so you can follow along that way. So let's go over the numbers first. What did the overall market did, and then we'll talk about where there was strength today. A little bit more of the R word, rotation. S&P actually finished down on the day. It was not a major move for the S&P at all today for the S&P 500, just slightly red for the day. The Qs managed to eke out a gain. There was an MOC imbalance. For the most part, they were actually kind of flat to down for the majority of the day. Really, where the outperformance was again was in the small caps. They outperformed quite nicely, and then also super high growth. We'll break that down in just a minute before we get to sectors. So let's just kind of review where we're at with the where the S&P is, and I'll give you my market view as I try to do in each one of these little videos. But yeah, you could see that we finished off the lows. It's a red bar for the day because we did close, I guess, a little bit lower than where we opened. But not much really to kind of overanalyze here. We're above value, and for me, as long as we're kind of above value for the month, I will kind of slant that way, more bullish than anything else. You could also see for the 1 hour time frame, right? We opened up the week above value. Here, let me throw on some labels here, as well as the profile, right? Because the MarketWebs indicator is using volume at price, right? That's the market profile that you're seeing here, and we carry that forward with some statistical significance. So 4214, right? That's really the level. You could see that we've tested it twice today, so it's valid. But again, value at price doing an excellent job. MarketWebs doing an excellent job for us in showing us that we held there, top of value. All right, and then if we move over to the Qs, you're going to see that also. There's the end of day ramp that we saw. Again, we spent a little bit of time inside value for the day, but we came right back above. Sorry, that was in the morning. That was 5 o'clock in the morning. So we spent the whole trading session above value. Again, not not much of a move. You had to just kind of stay in there for the day and try to think about if there was going to be an MOC, big imbalance, or if there was going to be a nice move. And I think there was about $1 billion, I think, to buy at the close. IWM. Let's try that again. Oh, so let me go. Sorry, before we go, we talked about the 1 hour chart for the Qs. Also, just easy level 334.50. 334.50. I was on Bloomberg on Friday. I mentioned the same thing. I said if we can manage to kind of stay above that level, we could look at some things. We could look at this virgin point of control contact. Remember, this is a virgin point of control. Price did not really pass through this. Also, there's no overlap between the value areas, so that's why we have a virgin point of control up here at 339. So that's kind of my short-term upside target for the IWM. And when I talk about short-term too, you kind of have to map out the rest of the month here. Before we kind of get into that topic of conversation, the small caps, continued. They went a bit sideways. Remember 2 weeks ago. Sorry, let me let me gather my thoughts. 2 weeks ago, we had some really nice outperformance. Last week, the small caps basically went sideways, digested some of that move, and they're back at it today. Big outperformance. I mean, that to me that's notable, right? And if you want to look at the relationship of this, here's IWM versus SPY. This outperformed all the way basically till about what's this month down here? Till March, right? Till March, and then the small caps. The small caps are in the numerator. Then the large caps outperformed, right? A lot of value outperformed as well. Those April, May months, but you could kind of see that the small caps are actually trying to move a bit back higher. So it's a logical place for them to kind of bounce and to kind of base. So you want to look at a 5-year chart, IWM versus SPY, just to see what that looks like too. But holding that trend, holding the 50-day moving average. So we could look at a couple other things here too. IWC was also, this is the microcap ETF. So again, it just kind of tells you, we're going to go into some of the movers and where there was option activity for the day, but I think that kind of gives you a pretty good picture. Microcap's up 2.4%. And then interesting, if you want to look at, where there was also really strong outperformance was the ARK funds, right? They were up 2.9% for the day. If you want to look at the movers, right? But just a lot of the a lot of the names that are in that portfolio, you had a couple things. Skills was up. That name saw option activity. A few. I'm surprised there's not more names. Well, I guess there are quite a few names up 5%. Roku saw some calls today. So again, quite a bit of names there outperforming and doing quite well in the in this fund. So that was part of the story today. Before we get into the next topic / subject, going back to my upside target, do I think a logical time? Again, this is a little bit of a guess, but looking at the calendar ahead. Right. One of the things that I've been talking about now for the last few months is that the first half of the month is generally stronger than the second half of the month. Also, when you look at what we have for the next couple weeks, this is going to be a very busy month. But right now, you've got a little bit of a quiet time, right? We have the CPI report this week. That's going to garner some attention. But really what I'm referring to is we're going to get next week, we get a Fed meeting on the 16th. Then you also have quadruple witching, right, on the 18th. So it's monthly option expiration. It's also futures expire for the quarter, index futures. And then the one that nobody seems to talk about, which is the greatest impact. I think it's just because some people just don't understand it as much. Maybe they can't see it as much. But the S&P and all the S&P indices rebalance. So that means like your things like XRT, these are the XRT is an equally weighted sector ETF, XBI, equally weighted biotech, and about 10 others. Maybe not that many in terms of the sector, select sectors, but they all rebalance back to equal weight, which is their benchmark. All the market cap indices, SPY rebalances, right? Again, the variable that changes between every quarterly rebalance. So the last quarterly rebalance was done back in March, right? And what changes from then is price, right? Some things outperform others, right? What's getting a lot of attention is GameStop and AMC. As we get to that topic, right? That is the 25th when the Russell indices rebalance. So remember, the Russell indices rebalance. Small cap, they have large cap, they have small caps, right? A lot of people are familiar with obviously the IWM ETF. There's a lot of assets that track the small cap benchmark. So that's the 25th. On the 18th is the regular quadruple witching where you get the S&P and NASDAQ indices. They all rebalance. So you're going to see a lot of volume, a lot of pre-positioning. That gets officially announced for the S&P on the 11th, close of business, right? But a lot of the portfolio trading desks at banks, they try to estimate ahead of time and put some trades on pre-position for that S&P rebalance, right? And then when those official numbers come out, then they definitely do a bunch of front running. Front running is not it's not bad that they're doing it, but everybody will know who pays for those files, from the S&P, what the names that are going to be moved around within indices and so on and so forth. They'll be pre-positioning in the beginning of the week of next week. Right. And then, of course, Russell and balance. So, one of the things I just, I think it's funny how much misinformation is on the tape right now. You could make up a good story and people just run with it. People don't fact check. People don't do any research. They just take whatever is on Twitter, whatever's on a message board, and they just run with it, like without doing maybe 5 minutes of research. That's the world that we live in right now in trading. It's a very odd and peculiar type thing. All these message boards posts that go up about naked shorting, all of that is, mainly false, right? You know that you can't do that, right? Banks don't authorize that. So, but people just love to just run with a story, right? And get emotions and stir up emotions and that's how it works. But I'll give you an example, right? So you get this story out that, GameStop and AMC might go into the large cap benchmark. Oh, there's going to be all this buying. Well, when you do your 5 minutes of research, and you could research this, you could go right to the Russell Reconstitution. You could Google Russell Reconstitution, and if you look what the biggest holdings are of the IWM, it's AMC and GameStop, right? So they're actually going to be this ETF, and there's a lot of assets that are benchmarked to small caps, right? So they may migrate these two, and I don't know for certain, but this was the story out this weekend. They're going to migrate these out of the small caps into the large caps. Now, given that there's such a big weight in here, they're going to be a very small weight in the large cap ETF, but they don't stay in both, right? It's either or. Either you're classified as a small cap or you're classified as a large cap. So it doesn't mean that there's going to be buying if they do go into the large cap ETF, right? But nobody says that. Nobody does the research. But yes, it's actually like a negative for these because again, the variable has been price, right? So those will get footed back, and I would assume there will be a little bit of selling that goes on. But again, it's a crazy market. It's just something that we have to deal with on a daily basis, that you could just float incorrect information, right? There was information on Friday about, OIH got halted. It must be because of a really big creation. Completely wrong. I'm not going to say who that was, but just wrong, just incorrect information all around. And, it's unfortunate that nobody does anything, nobody says anything. Hey, maybe you should apologize for that post. Maybe you should apologize on all these message boards saying that you're going to go after naked short sellers. Because that's not true either. I mean, it's completely made up. But we're in a world of make-believe, and people like to trade on make-believe stuff. All right, so that's my little rant for the day. Let's get into more of the price action. So the other story, great story today, is that the Biogen drug got approved today. So it's great for those suffering with Alzheimer's. Hopefully they can cure this thing. If you know anybody who has Alzheimer's, it's a horrible disease. So I guess we'll find out more about the FDA approving that. From a trading standpoint, Biogen went up to right around a little bit north of 420. Notice that big red line there is a virgin point of control. We've talked about these over and over, how they can be very sticky points, right? It's overhead supply, right? So this is right from this where my cursor is now. The market remembers where there was a lot of buyers and sellers that previously met up. So it could be that that was a little bit of hit a little bit of a selling pressure pivot there in Biogen. Of course, the other thing to look at is whenever a name gets halted, I always want to go to the ETF and find an ETF where that name may be a big weight. Now, that wasn't really the case for Biogen. It's about a 3.5% weight in IBB, but you could see what basically happens is while a name is halted, the ETF will continue to trade and superimpose a price. So it was kind of a little bit of a when something gets halted like that, sometimes it's a little bit of a buy the rumor and then sell the news. Once it becomes unhalted, right, you could see what the price did. Went all the way up to 161. Didn't fall back too far, but you're looking at this 1 hour VPOC. Again, the MarketWebs give you a great sense of where price might stop. It's not 100%. Price can power through these, but more often than not, there is that hesitation, right? We actually went through this and kind of came back. But they're really good for planning out your trades, right? And if it manages, so the way that you could kind of, like if you're bullish biotech and you're playing that theme through the IBB ETF, what you would do is basically at this point, put your stop right around, maybe a little bit lower than this virgin point of control, 157-ish, right? And if it breaks that, you get out. If it manages to hold above it, then you can maybe target this next virgin point of control, which is at 166. Also, when you move to the daily time frame, you could see that there's one up close to 164. So that would be a great place to kind of target where you can kind of, look at it like a swing trade and exit the swing trade right around that 164 level, right, with the stop, just as I mentioned. All right, that's basically just very planned out trading. It's a lot of what we do at the Tribeca Trade Group, right? We take an idea and then we look at it via the technicals and say, hey, where can this thing possibly get to? And the MarketWebs just do a phenomenal job with telling us, right? Telling us where there could be some upside, for a name that has not broken out, because all of this virgin point of controls, is really based on previous, where there's been previous buyers and sellers, right? When price has not gone through the highs. Once price gets through the highs, then it's a whole nother game. All right, which kind of brings me to the next little one to look at. Kind of interesting, the day, the semis were a little bit weak today, but NVIDIA, notice, and I get this question all the time in the trading room. Is this stock overbought? Yeah, it's overbought. It's a little bit overbought at this point, right? And I'm just using this as an example, but I always get the question when a name breaks out. Is it overbought? Well, yes, but that's not a reason, in my opinion, to short a name. That's actually strength, right? I don't want to short strength. I want to embrace strength. And you could see, for example, right, the RSI on this, which people like to define using, the relative strength index, where the number is, and it's a 76. But you could see, look at the price action today, right? Notice it was a little bit weak this morning, and we saw call buying, and there's still buyers in this thing, right? It doesn't really look like there's a lot of sellers. It looks like more people may be under positioned in this thing, and it didn't have a phenomenal day. But, what I'm looking for at this point, and I'm long this name in the TTG Trend Portfolio, but I would love it if it just goes sideways a little bit, right? Consolidates and then takes the next leg higher. But, again, if you look at this weekly chart, right, I would not want to fade this strength, right? This is where things get really fun when things break out like this, all right? So that's NVIDIA, which name that didn't get a lot of attention. So where was the attention today, right? So if we go back to our spreadsheet, we talked about the biotech move. That obviously had some of the stronger names. Clean energy was strong. If you look at that ARK ETF, again, was up 2.9% so if you look at things, things that really kind of caught option activity, it was a lot of momentum stuff, right, in some of these names. Skills was a name. Now, again, I'll show you how you use the MarketWebs to kind of time your exit, right? We saw a lot of calls that were going in around this price, right in the beginning of the day. Well, 22.30 was resistance for the day, right? And that's a level that you want to see, So if you enter a trade in here around, just short of 21, that you're going to have some resistance and a place to kind of take some of that trade off, which is at 22.33, right? Another one that saw all kinds of option activity, which is squeezing here. Notice that this took out a VPOC, but huge day, 32%. So in the after hours, it went and found, where that there was some buyers and sellers that previously met up. Now there's another one up here at 1352. There's another one at 1413. But for now, these things will act like magnets, right? Price, just like this one did too, right? Same exact concept. Price was down here at $7, and it rallied right up until a virgin point of control. Then it basically faded away, right? So that's kind of how. So for me, I would not chase this name here. We saw this thing all day long, just repeat over and over and over. Option activity stood out like a sore thumb today. Other names, you kind of go through the list here. Fuel Cell, which I did take this trade. This name reports later in the week, but I like the risk to reward here. It is above value. and then we can kind of begin to kind of look at where this thing could basically run to. But notice I don't have a lot of those VPOCs. And again, when I'm in a trade or when I'm looking at taking a trade, I don't want to see a virgin point of control right in front of the price action. So the fact that the next one up here on the 1 hour time frame is up at 1330, I view as fairly decent risk to reward. I did take a profit target in it. 1220 could also be another place where I take a target in the trade. That's probably what I'll do. Look for my next target at 1220 and look for my final target to take this off before earnings at 1330. If it manages to stay and has high momentum above there, you can see that there's another one up here at 1440. Right, so that's how you kind of look at these things. BNGO is another one. Right, notice where this thing got to, virgin point of control and stopped right there. So again, sometimes they'll just keep buying calls over and over and over, but virgin point of controls and the technicals for me always trump the option activity on the tape. I trust I trust the MarketWebs indicator, a lot more than that. All right, so that was BNGO. Again, this is where we saw the option activity. There was some Roku calls today. Open was another one. Fastly. And we could look at a couple more of these things. So my opinion is on, when we see option activity in every one of these underperformers that we've seen over the last 3 to 6 months, maybe 6 months is a little bit too long, right? Maybe 3 to 4 months, right? All these things have underperformed. You try to just basically define the trade. Like this one didn't set up for me. Why didn't it set up? Because it's in value for the month, right? And it's a little bit of a harder trade. CCIV was another one that we saw calls in. This one I think is also interesting. You could see how tight the value area is for the month. When it's a very tight value area like that, usually a big move is coming. And you could see it's kind of, going that way. Right, and you can see that there isn't anything right in front of it. So, perhaps if they want to buy and try to, get this thing going higher again, it's got a little bit of room before you really hit anything in terms of, a big pocket of where buyers and sellers have met up before. Notice that there's one all the way up here at 31, right? So that would be a nice percentage gain. 31 is a little bit further north of where I think this can get to. I think it could get to 29 or 29 and change. 31 is a little bit ambitious, but still. Right? So that's another one that I like out of that group. ATOS, another really small cap name, which has been seeing option activity repetitively all the way up to $6. Right? Big green candle for that. So again, just going over where that the option activity was. Another one that I purchased on Friday. I had purchased some next week's calls, this week's calls, because this was on Friday, and then I made it into a call spread. So this thing's up to 3.3%. Again, it's got some open road ahead of it. All right. And then a couple other names that I thought were interesting for the day. Yeti, right? That was a name that I bought right out of the gate. That was a name that we talked about in the weekend watch list, right? So this one perfect, right? You got to break out of nice uptrend, break out of the consolidation after earnings. The other name that I tried playing was Crocs too. Crocs unfortunately did not follow, right? So similar type of thing. Big gap up on earnings, but has been consolidating those gains after it, took another leg higher after earnings. I could have stayed with it here, but again, I'm just being mindful that this market, will kind of end on this note. But here's my trades, as I always show the trades in every one of these videos, so that you could see what I did. We talked about Fuel Cell. This was also a name that I put on Friday. I thought the technicals set up fairly well. I got a one target in that trade today. LEV, the Lion Electric company. So again, another clean energy company. It's a electric car company. I'm looking at that 24 VPOC all the way up there too, right? So again, you can kind of see, I would rather take a trade when I see like a whole bunch of momentum calls or, option activity that I think, where the VPOCs are not right in front of it, where it's not trapped inside value, and it's starting to move above the range on multiple time frames. All right, that's how I kind of look for some of these trades. So those were a couple. The last thing that I'll say, I'll put on a little bit of Microsoft trade too. Got a quick target in that one. But I think this market, while it continues to, we talked about this in the weekend video a bit, that while we are trying to break out and trying to go higher here, we are just continuing to see a lot of rotation, right? And I think that as an active trader, right, if you're an active trader, you could basically just make adjustments throughout the day, right? We've talked about specifically how some areas of the market look like they're into some heavy digestion right now, right? So, for example, the consumer discretionary group, right? This group is consolidating. It's in value. It doesn't really look like I want to be in this group. Same thing with the home builders, right? Remember what the home builders did earlier in the year? Huge move, right? So now, after all these gains have been made and this thing stalled out here, let these things consolidate for a little while and set up, right? And then we just have to kind of change around our portfolio a little bit, in terms of what these things are looking at. Deere's another one that we talked about, I think once or twice last week. Huge leader of the market over the last year, right? Big move, right? Since obviously the pandemic lows, one of the best performing stocks out there. But look at it change. What's it doing now? Well, price is kind of struggling a bit. It's below the 50-day moving average. It's having a tough time hanging on to the bottom of value. So here's where I think it kind of gets interesting. Is this a bad sign for the market that Deere is starting to kind of possibly break down, right? Well, as long as there's other things that go up, then no, it's not a big deal, right? But you have to be careful with the way that people post things on Twitter, right? And they're like, oh, geez, this is not a good sign for the market. Well, you have to look at the other side of the market. You got to look at the positive. If there's no other positives, then I would say, okay, geez, you're really making a great point, and you can make that argument. But if you look at a couple other sectors and notice them breaking out, then you got to say that there's just a lot of rotation going on under the hood, right? So it's important. Don't get fooled by one particular chart. Make sure that you do your analysis, right? Make sure that you go through and you look at all sectors, piece them together. What are they telling you? Just like the home builders, right? Does this mean that the home builders are digesting a huge gain? Does that mean it's a negative for the overall market? No. As long as I can find something else that looks like it's doing a little bit better, right? Tech does not look horrible here, right? And we've certainly talked about a number of other areas of the market that are looking fairly decent. So we'll leave it there. But again, do your analysis. We talked about this a couple different ways in this video. That just don't take somebody because they post something on Twitter. Make sure that you kind of fact check them a little bit. Do 5 or 10 minutes of research. It's the same thing with somebody posting one chart and then telling a story about one chart. Make sure that you do the research. Take a look, right? Does this small caps, right? Excuse me. Do these micro caps that look like they're trying to break higher? Does that look bearish to you, right? All right, so I'll leave it there, right? That's basically what our job is to do every day, is to try to put the pieces. There's a lot of pieces of the puzzle. We're never, in trading and investing, and in, if you want to take it to another level, to economics, right? You're never going to piece everything together, right? But you're going to try to put as many pieces of the puzzle together. But again, to try to have you're never going to get it to 100% confidence level, right? But the more that you kind of do your research and go through your analysis, then you're going to be able to that's going to help you to form an opinion, and that's going to give you some conviction in the market. Now, if you don't do the research, and you're relying on somebody posting something on Twitter, either way, whether you're bullish or bearish, you're probably not going to have a lot of conviction because you haven't gone through and done the work. So again, that's what we're here for. We try to definitely help. That's why I do these videos, to try to keep people informed and try to provide some trade ideas too. All right, guys, thanks for watching. And again, if you like this type of thing, you could find obviously more detail about what we do. By the way, I love this post by Trader Mentality about setting alerts. big part of the process, right, of what you do right now, especially with all these rotations that we're seeing every couple of days in this market. The more that you can kind of set alerts, set them and forget it, the more that you can have, you know, areas and names you could follow these names, as many as you like, as long as you set an alert rather than jumping from chart to chart and chart. As long as you place alerts on things, you're not going to miss many moves. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Again, here's how you become a member of the Tribeca Trade Group. Just go to my profile on on Twitter, and you can click on here, and you can see some of the testimonials and that kind of thing. All right, guys, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.